I've filed for divorce. You've got a week to get out," George said with a look of disdain, holding hands with the woman standing next to him, seemingly flaunting their closeness. Occasionally intertwining arms and joking around, I felt bombarded by what they were trying to show off. This happened right after I was discharged from the hospital from a sudden illness. For some reason, George's name was missing from our family register. In a panic, I returned home only to find an unfamiliar woman there. I remember hearing that George had taken advantage of his company's welfare program to care for me. Using his caregiving leave to cheat? What nerve! He's always been the type to discard anything not essential to his life. It seems I'm no exception now. I never thought I'd be treated with such contempt by my own husband. He must think he's the one who gets to make all the choices, that his word is law. Otherwise, he couldn't be this cruel. But I've already made moves he can't just talk his way out of. He'll soon realize he's not the only one in the dark. My name is Erica Smith, a 40-year-old caregiver working in a nursing home. After graduating from college, I worked in sales for a while but have been dedicated to caregiving ever since I quit sales. I met George, my husband, through work when I was 35. The cafeteria at the nursing home where I work is operated by an external company. It was chosen by the owner, who's very particular about food, ensuring our residents eat well. "Eating delicious food brings vitality to life," says the owner, who compared many companies before choosing the current one. It's a blessing that their representative, George, visits our facility 2 to 3 times a month. Over time, we started chatting during his visits. Over time, as I regularly visited the facility, we started to engage in small talk. Working at a company related to food also drew me to the meticulous way of life I lead every day. I was drawn to how meticulously he lived, a rarity among single men living alone. Hearing about his routine of starting the day with his favorite bakery's bread and coffee, having a vegetable-rich dinner, and ending the day with herbal tea was quite surprising. "George, you live so thoughtfully. I'm always rushing around. I'd love to learn from you. It's nothing special, just doing what everyone does." But that normal is something special about you, George. I don't even know where to start. Maybe start with herbal tea. I'll bring you some of my favorites next time. Please try them. Our conversations grew more frequent after he introduced me to herbal tea. The tea George recommended was so good, I started drinking it daily, not just for health but because I enjoyed it. "Hi. That herbal tea you recommended was delicious. I even bought some for myself. I think I can keep this up." "That's great. The tea I gave you helps calm a restless mind. I thought it would be perfect for you." "A restless mind? You seemed tired." "I thought if your mind was at ease, your feelings might change too." George's gaze was filled with kindness. I'd always been focused on others, neglecting myself. To know someone cared this much was a revelation. I was feeling a happiness I had never experienced before. "Ever since I first met you, Erica, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I'm so glad we can talk like this now. If it's okay with you, Erica, would you like to date me?" My answer was already decided. "If you're okay with me, I'd be delighted." I've always thought my life was somewhat unremarkable. After graduating from a college I chose on a whim, I was hired as a salesperson at a company but couldn't achieve the sales targets and was always getting yelled at. Being called a burden to the company and useless, I got fed up and quit. Then, I ended up working at a nursing home by chance. As I worked, I realized the depth of caregiving and continued my studies to get certified while working, even with night shifts. It was hard putting myself last, but someone was watching over me, working tirelessly. To think there's someone who sees me working tirelessly without concern for appearances. Finding time amidst our busy schedules, George and I spent time together. Our dates were simple, involving shopping or movies. Shopping for our future life together made me feel so happy. "How about we get matching mugs? We can use them when we live together." I like that idea. I've been looking for a simple mug like this. "Great. Thinking about living together makes me so excited." We slowly started preparing for our future married life by picking out matching items, imagining living together. One day, while sitting at a cafe we stopped by during shopping, George suddenly became serious. "What's wrong? You look so serious all of a sudden. Stomach ache?" "No, it's just..." "Don't push yourself. Should we call it a day?" I can't wait any longer. While shopping and thinking about living together, I couldn't contain my feelings anymore. Will you marry me? As he said this, George was looking intently at me. Had there ever been a moment in my life filled with such happiness? Yes, I'd be honored. I'm so relieved. I was worried you might say no. To think you were so worried. I had no idea. Today was the most nerve-wracking day for me. The tension has finally lifted. George looked relieved. Well, the answer was obvious. With you, every day seems like it will be happy. And so, George and I got married. We both lived alone, but since George's apartment was quite spacious for one person, we decided to use it as our home. I brought over my necessary belongings, and we started our married life at George's place. Just like George had described, his apartment reflected his meticulous lifestyle. I could tell from my previous visits that every detail was well organized, not a speck of dust in sight. The thought of starting our new life together here made my heart race. What kind of happiness awaited us? Little did I know, this excitement would soon be shattered. 6 months into our marriage, I was getting ready for a night shift at home. I usually take a night snack, my uniform, and a towel, but I couldn't find my stuff. My tumbler was a recent gift from a friend and a favorite of mine. It was missing along with my towel. Maybe George accidentally took them to work? But would George really mistake my items for his? Despite searching everywhere, I couldn't find them. So, I decided to use a spare towel from my locker and buy some tea at a store on my way to work. With that decision made, I headed off to work. Work went smoothly as usual. I was eager to get home, take a shower, and sleep in my bed due to recent fatigue. More than anything, I've been missing George because of my consecutive night shifts. I rushed home with that thought alone. I found George in the living room, getting ready to leave for work. He was ironing his favorite shirt as always. Oh, it's Erica. Hey, George. Good timing. I have something to ask you, is that okay? Is it about the tumbler? I was surprised George brought up the tumbler. Since he mentioned it, maybe he knew something. Yeah, I can't find my tumbler or towel. Did you see them? I looked before going to work but couldn't find them. Oh, is that so? I think they were from my old place. If that's the case, I've already thrown them out. I couldn't believe George said he had thrown them away so plainly. Why? There was no need to throw them away without asking. Things need to be organized properly. He replied, looking puzzled, as if he couldn't see what he did wrong. I was shocked, not knowing he had thrown them away. Especially since the tumbler had sentimental value, a birthday gift from an old friend. George then sighed and looked at me. To use such tasteless stuff, I didn't know you were that kind of person, Erica. I got rid of it for you, and yet you respond like this? I was furious that he threw away my belongings without permission, acting as if he hadn't done anything wrong. But I was so angry about my precious items being disposed of without my consent that I couldn't find the right words. Is that all you wanted to talk about? I have to go now. Oh, and Erica, make sure to sort out your unnecessary stuff too. What unnecessary stuff? I decluttered my belongings when I got married and moved into this house. Even though it was supposed to be our newlywed life, moving into the house where George had been living alone, I made sure to declutter my belongings so it wouldn't become too filled with my stuff. His words made me pause and look around the house. Despite my exhaustion and sleepiness from the night shift, a bad feeling washed over me, and suddenly, I wasn't tired anymore. My bad feeling was spot on. There are several things that should have been brought from my house that are missing. Clothes, shoes, bags, and accessories I bought when I was single. At a glance, I haven't taken stock of everything, but it seems a lot of stuff has been thrown away. I can't believe someone would just dispose of other people's belongings. I selected what I thought was essential, bringing only the bare minimum for a new life with George. Honestly, I don't have that many personal items, and I don't leave things scattered around. And yet, they were disposed of without my consent? It looks like items with slightly flashy colors or characters have been thrown away. Probably, George got rid of things he didn't like or that didn't match the interior. A heads up would have been nice before deciding to just get rid of them. The shock of having my belongings thrown away left me unable to move for a while. Maybe it's partly my fault for not seeing that someone could do such a thing, but still, there was no need to just throw things away. I felt my head going blank from the shock. I don't know how long I was like that, but when I noticed, the outside was dyed with the color of sunset. After coming home, realizing my things had been thrown away by George, I just sat there in shock. Looking at the clock, it was almost 6 p.m. Realizing George would be home soon, I tried to stand up, but I felt dizzy. Honestly, I have no appetite and can't think of what to make. While I was like this, George came back. "I'm home, what have you been doing all day?" "Ah, George, welcome home. I'm feeling a bit under the weather." "Oh, is that so? What about dinner?" He seemed disinterested in me as he took off his suit and sprayed it. "Sorry, I haven't made anything because I'm not feeling well and I don't have an appetite. There's some meat marinated in sauce though, if you want. It just needs to be cooked." "Ah, then it's fine." He answered grumpily and heavily sat on the sofa, starting to fiddle with his smartphone. "What, how long are you going to be there? You're kind of in the way." He glared at me as if I was a nuisance. This behavior is hard to believe from George, who used to be so concerned about me. Maybe he had a rough day at work, I thought, and decided to leave him be, quietly exiting the room. That's when George stopped me. "Hey, you're just going to leave without saying anything? Don't you have anything to say to me?" His eyes, which I thought were kind before we got married, now felt cold. While feeling the coldness in his gaze, I replied, "Ah, sorry for not preparing dinner. I'm not feeling well, so I'm going to bed early." I realized too late that he was such an inconsiderate person. Can I really live well with him from now on? That anxiety kept going round and round in my head. Maybe because I had a lot on my mind, but I've never felt this sick before. I get dizzy easily, and I'm constantly battling nausea. Honestly, I can't work. On my days off, I spend the whole day in bed, and I'm taking time off work intermittently. I used to be able to bounce back after a day's hard work, but now I'm just falling apart. On my days off, I spend the whole day in bed, and I'm taking time off work intermittently. The cause wasn't clear, but I had to be hospitalized for tests because I was feeling unwell. After several days in the hospital without a clear cause and no improvement in my condition, my stay was extended. I was anxious that George might be upset during this time, but then George visited my hospital room. "Sorry for bothering you during your busy work schedule, George. The cause isn't clear yet, but I'll be back on my feet soon, so please bear with me." "Don't be silly, don't apologize. I'll do my best to support you until you're feeling well again." George had returned to the kind smile I saw before we were married. The George the first saw at home that time must have been grumpy just because of work or something. I convinced myself of that. "Thank you. Well, I'll be heading back for today." "Oh, right, I'll take some leave for caregiving, so call me any time you need." Saying this, George left. I remembered George mentioning once about his workplace's benefits, including leave for family care. He hadn't gone into detail about how many days or the specifics, but I remembered thinking that large companies really are different. While I wanted him by my side because I felt lonely, this leave was a blessing since I might need to ask him for various small favors. I immediately contacted George to bring some things to the hospital, but every time I called, it went to voicemail. Thinking it was strange, I went to sleep that day, but the next day my calls still wouldn't go through. It was definitely odd, and even after leaving a message, it never got read. While feeling anxious, I focused on my treatment to get over the mysterious illness. Thanks to concentrating on the treatment, I was able to leave the hospital after about 3 weeks. Even after informing George about my discharge, my messages still weren't read. I became anxious, wondering if something had happened to George. I just wanted to get home as soon as possible. Then I remembered I needed documents for work submission. There seemed to be documents I had to submit at the municipal office. It was a bit tough going there while still recovering, and more than anything, I was worried about George, but thinking it would be difficult to go back later, I stopped by the municipal office on my way home. I felt odd looking at the documents issued by the office. On a document that should show data for all family members, only my name was printed. Since it was supposed to output data for the entire family, George's and my names should definitely have been printed. At that moment, I had a bad feeling. Rushing back home, I sensed someone other than George was in the apartment. I could smell a perfume that George doesn't usually use from the entrance. Entering the living room, there was George and a woman I didn't know. "Huh? George, who is this?" George, smirking, turned around with the woman clinging closely to him and spoke. "Is this the person George mentioned?" "Ah, but it's okay now." I had no idea what was okay. And in this situation, I felt like I was in a drama, something I could coldly observe from a corner of my mind. I became so stunned that I accidentally dropped my bag. The documents issued by the municipal office fell out of the bag. I reconsidered and decided to ask George a question. "Hey, who is this person?" And when I got documents from the municipal office, only my name came up. "Do you know anything about that?" George answered with a smirk. "I filed for divorce." For a moment, I thought I had misheard, but judging by George's demeanor, it didn't seem like a joke. "What? Wait a minute. What do you mean, filed for divorce?" "That's because I don't need a failure. It's only natural to get rid of things you don't need," he said, snorting disdainfully. "I thought marrying you might make life a bit easier, but that's not the case at all. Plus, being hospitalized with an uncertain discharge date because of your health issues, that's just bad news." Really? If it were me, I couldn't just leave George like that. Getting rid of dead weight is the best option. "You have 1 week to leave," Kelly said, laughing mockingly and pointing her finger. "Kelly is so kind. I actually wish you'd leave right now," George added as they intertwined their fingers together. I didn't understand what was being shown to me. This was supposed to be the home I started living in because I married George, and I couldn't grasp what these two were trying to say. George threw a large duffel bag at me. "Some old-fashioned guy at work says, a man isn't complete until he's married, so I just married to get a big project he promised." "What? But you married me because you loved me, right?" "Not that I ever said I loved you. You just seemed like an easy option for marriage. If I'm going to date, I prefer someone beautiful, right?" Kelly indeed looked like a modern, beautiful office lady, with her neatly polished nails and stylishly curled hair. See, timing is crucial in these matters. The one who acts quickly wins. "So, when are you leaving?" George pressed for an answer. So, George married a somewhat decent woman he often saw at work, to make a good impression on his boss for a promotion. It seems I was only needed as a nominal wife, not because he truly loved me. "I understand your feelings very well." Of course, my answer was already decided. "Well, I'm leaving right now." I said that and left the house in 3 seconds. In fact, after being discharged, I planned to stay at my parents' home in the next town for a while, so my daily essentials were already there. My work necessities were in my locker at work, so no issue there. I packed the documents left next to the table into my bag before leaving. The bag contained documents from a detective agency and an envelope with George's company's name printed on it. Then, I decided to head somewhere specific. My destination was George's office. I had visited George's office 2 or 3 times before for various reasons. Actually, a letter had been sent to me from George's company while I was hospitalized. It was forwarded to my hospital room. The envelope addressed to me contained several documents needed for family care leave. It turns out there were documents that needed to be filled out not only by George's side but also by me, the one being cared for, so they were sent to me. I came to George's workplace in person to submit these documents. George's boss, who had thrown us a dinner party to celebrate our marriage at the time, just happened to be there, so I handed them directly to him. He looked at me in surprise and kept glancing back at the whiteboard in the office. The whiteboard had a big magnet saying caregiving leave, and below it, return date undecided. It means that within George's office, he was known as someone taking leave to care for his wife, with no known return date. Given that I, George's wife, had recovered and came to deliver the documents myself, it's no wonder he was surprised. I answered honestly to all the questions George's boss asked me about the reason for my hospitalization, the frequency of visits, the details of the support, and more. George's boss looked at me with a face that seemed to say he couldn't believe it. Apparently, what George had told him was completely different from my report, and he was confused. However, after comparing the medical documents and hospital receipts I submitted with the days George had taken off, he seemed to conclude that I was telling the truth. Then, I handed over another document. A document proving the divorce, which left George's boss speechless. If a person who claimed to have taken leave to care for his sick wife was actually divorced, the boss couldn't just stay silent. It seemed like the company decided it was no different from taking dishonest leave, and some form of disciplinary action was inevitable. Indeed, what George did was downright dishonest leave. And that too with infidelity involved. Taking dishonest leave for an affair and filing for divorce without consent. Unforgivable. When I left George's workplace, I noticed dozens of missed calls from George. Wondering if he still had something more to say, I was about to put away my phone when a call from George came through. "Hey, you didn't go talking unnecessary stuff, did you?" That was the first thing he said, and I had to suppress the urge to retort. "Unnecessary stuff? Whatever you say, people are gonna believe me anyway, so don't get it twisted," he said before hanging up. Was George trying to warn me with that? He must be assuming I wouldn't dare speak up. I went to a law firm and consulted about the divorce and suing for damages for George's infidelity. I provided the evidence and information on the other party gathered by the detective agency I had hired earlier, deciding to demand compensation from both George and his affair partner. I couldn't let them get away with taking the best parts for themselves and then turning a blind eye to the rest. The lawyer worked quickly, and a few days later, documents demanding compensation were sent to both George and his affair partner. They both called in a panic. "Hey! What the hell do you think you're doing? Yeah. How dare you, the one who wasn't chosen, do something like this?" They sounded like yapping puppies, making my ears hurt just by listening. Nothing much. Just doing what's natural. You didn't really think it would all end without any consequences, did you? How dare you, Erica? When did you find out? When? I've known for quite a while. Even though I work night shifts, not seeing you for days on end is obviously strange, don't you think? That's because. Thought you wouldn't be suspected if you said it was for work? I'm the type who wants to know if something seems off. That's why I had it investigated. On the other end of the phone, George's breathing sounded rough, possibly from anger. You had it investigated. That's low. And sneaking around to meet your affair partner while married is better? I heard she's someone from a client's company. What Kelly does or who she is has nothing to do with you. If anything happens to Kelly, I won't forgive you. His logic seems to be in a fantasy world. He doesn't seem to grasp the situation he's in. You have time to worry about others? Well, just stop causing trouble for everyone around you. There was another issue. Kelly, George's affair partner, hadn't paid any damages I sue her for yet. Either she thinks she doesn't have to pay if she keeps quiet, or maybe she truly believes she's not in the wrong. Either way, I couldn't let this go without doing something. I decided not to just let it be and consulted my lawyer again. Eventually, we decided to garnish Kelly's wages. With her salary garnished, her workplace must have found out about the affair. Kelly bombarded me with calls. Picking up the phone felt like a hassle, but I didn't want to delay dealing with this nuisance, so I finally answered. Hey, what's the meaning of this? Because of you, I'm about to get fired. It seems her workplace found out about her affair and she's being shunned. Both Kelly and George, though they work at different places, are facing the choice of being transferred to a remote sales office or resigning. Well, if someone like you, who cheats, is in the workplace, it's bound to affect the atmosphere, right? Just choose between transferring or quitting. Impossible. I'm not the type who can live in the countryside. If you hadn't said anything, I could have continued as is. You thought you could continue like this? I couldn't help but ask, feeling incredulous. Yes, I can get married, and George can marry me and be happily ever after. I felt a bit sorry for Kelly. Being ignorant might be a form of misfortune in itself. Do you seriously think that? On what basis can you say he won't cheat again? Well, if there's love, there won't be any cheating. You don't have to tell me. Fine. If you're okay with my leftovers, go ahead. But don't think you can dodge the damages I'm going to claim. I decided to end the call after saying my piece. People who do such reprehensible things can't just find happiness. Thinking they can secure their happiness after cheating is a huge mistake. Rumor has it, both George and Kelly are living miserably. Stressed out by being ostracized at work and eventually resigning to escape, their job searches are hampered by their reputations spreading unexpectedly far. Naturally, no one wants to hire someone known for cheating, and they're struggling to find work. Was it about half a year after the divorce? George called me. Hello, what now? Hey, can I work at your place? I can't find a job anywhere, and I keep getting rejected everywhere I go, and I'm struggling to make ends meet. It's because you've been doing things too shameful to mention to others, isn't it? I was thinking maybe I could work at your place. I'm flabbergasted at his audacity to say such a thing. I could work for you. What is that supposed to mean? Stop making a mockery of everything. It's high time you realize that you're in this situation because of your own doing. After my words, it seemed to have hit George hard, and he hung up the phone. I might have never spoken so clearly to George throughout our relationship and marriage. Finally saying what I really thought felt liberating. I'm still working at the care facility without change. After spending some time at my parents' place post-hospitalization, I've returned to work and am enjoying living on my own again. Working in a care facility is never dull because every day is a learning experience. Even with qualifications and continued employment, no 2 days are the same, making it stimulating. One day, I received an offer for a promotion. They noticed my dedication to my job and wanted me to lead my colleagues as a chief. Honestly, I've never taken on a leadership role before, so I'm both thrilled and a bit bewildered by the sudden offer. However, it's an opportunity I'd like to embrace and do my best. Moreover, the results from my caregiving certification exam came back. To my delight, I passed on the first try. With this qualification and the potential raise, I can earn enough to live on my own without any issues. Moving forward, I want to believe in my potential and keep challenging myself.